Guys, so I am here with the voice behind the camera, the barbecue king, the DM, the home improvement master. Shit, there was more. Some people call him the doctor. Depends on the day. But I'm here with Todd.
Most of these titles aren't necessarily earned, but especially doctor. I have done minor things,
But he is a jack of all trades in a way. You have a horse.
yeah, it's one of my passions.
You're a gamer.
One of my passions.
You're a home improver.
Out of necessity.
One of my passions out of necessity.
No, I do enjoy it.
But today we're going to interview him on one of his many things he has done in his lifetime, and that is we're having an interview with an ex-cop. You ready for this, Mr. Todd?
As ready as I'm going to be.
Okay. He was kind enough to agree to sit down with me and let me interview him on this, so y'all better be nice. Okay, number one. Why did you become a cop?
I wanted to give back to my community in some way, and I thought that I could do that as a police officer.
Number two, how long were you a cop?
More than 7 years.
That's like a third of how long I've been alive. I think. It's like about less than half of Jackie's lifetime. Unless more than half of Jackie's lifetime, my bad. What did you think of your chief?
I found him to be more political than anything else, and a lot of times that's doesn't necessarily mesh with the job. I mean, he was a pretty good chief for the most part, but politics and police work, I don't think coincide very well, especially if you're not working in a political position like a sheriff is elected. You know, but a lot of times you got to do your job. Your job is your job.
What was the most satisfying moment for you as a police officer?
Uh, helping injured people until EMS got there, keeping them calm, doing first aid, first responder stuff, helping out elderly people, that just being there to help people. I like the serve part of the protect and serve. There's a lot of times that you just don't get to do that in that job.
What did you hate most about being an officer of the law?
Dealing with most of the negativity. When you're out there seeing negative in people all the time, you start to get jaded, and you start looking at people like everybody's a criminal in one aspect or another, and I just hated that. That's not me. It's not who I was.
How do you feel about the prejudice that there is against cops?
Some of them, there's a very few out there that are badge heavy, or what we call badge heavy, and they think that they're above the law and all this, and they give everybody else a bad name. But for the most part, most police officers out there are just trying to do their job. They're just trying to make sure everybody's safe and that people can make it home alive.
Have you ever been faced with that prejudice?
Oh, many times. Many times.
What is one of your funnier stories from your time as an officer?
Good question.
In my defense, I gave him these questions like a week ago.
I forgot that one. One of my funniest stories. We used to play pranks in the station, and just between the police officers. And there was quite a few times that some of those pranks were pretty hilarious. You get used to mace. Let's put it that way. You get used to mace a lot. Just with the pranks alone, let alone macing other people. You get used to mace.
How do you feel about officers that report other officers to internal affairs?
That's a case by case basis. If you go through your chain of command and nothing ever seems to be done, and the other officer is definitely doing something wrong, then it needs to be brought somewhere. So internal affairs has their own job to do.
Have you ever had to do it yourself?
No. I usually handled most things in house, as they say. I was actually higher up on the chain of command, and if somebody came to me with a problem, I usually dealt with it or made sure it was dealt with.
What are your thoughts on mandatory body cams of officers having to wear mandatory body cams while on duty?
I think it's a good idea. It keeps the police officers from getting into trouble as far as, if somebody comes up and says, oh, he did this, he did that, he did this. You have proof. You have proof you didn't. I used to carry a recording device. It wasn't a camera, but it recorded all of our conversations. And I used it mostly for my own records as far as writing out my reports, end of the day reports. But I found it came in handy on more than one occasion when somebody accused me of something that I didn't do.
Why do you think there's such a controversy around this subject for police officers?
I would say mainly because there are those who are badge heavy that try and get away with things that they know they shouldn't do. And liability in the departments themselves had sometimes there's issues with people who they might get sued for some reason, or the officer for some reason doesn't follow protocol, and that ends up being a lawsuit of some kind. That's probably the main reason.
Did you follow more the spirit of the law or the letter of the law?
Depended on case by case basis. I believe personally in more of the spirit of the law, and it depended on the reaction. Like if I was doing just basic traffic, it depended on the reaction of the person in general. They in the academy they taught us about officer discretion, and if I pulled somebody over and they were polite and nice, then I looked more at the spirit of the law. I still do it to myself. I catch myself speeding and I slow down. If I saw somebody speeding or caught somebody speeding and they were, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying as close of attention as I should have been, or what have you, I would let them go with a warning. But if it was an on and on basis, pulled them over 4 or 5 times in 1 week doing the same thing, then you start, hey, there's obviously an issue, you give them a ticket.
I've been pulled over twice in one day. Well, my buddy did because I was in the truck, because everybody knows I don't drive.
Mm-hmm.
I got pulled over twice in one day. The first time was because the taillight was out. The second time was because he was reaching in the bag of... He had got McDonald's and was reaching in the bag and swerved over the yellow line.
It happens.
We got our vehicle searched after that one. Because we got pulled over twice in the same day, and because he was swerving. So they were under the suspicion that maybe we were drunk or something. So they like breathalyzed him and everything. We were really polite. We got out of the vehicle like we were asked. We sat on the curb like we were asked. We didn't get rude with him. The ironic thing though was the cop that pulled us over the first time was backup for the cop that pulled us over the second time. Okay. What do TV and movies get wrong and right about police work?
Oh, one of the things they get wrong about police work is there's so much action in a TV show. There's so much excitement and adrenaline in a TV show or a movie. And 90% of police work is boredom. Complete and total boredom.
Paper pushing?
Paper pushing, you're sitting in a squad car on traffic duty. I mean, it's just boring. Unless you get a call, or it's boredom.
Now, what do they get right?
Uh,
He's like, crap, now I actually gotta think about this.
Well, another thing they get wrong is the shoot-ups. It's nothing like in real life. Some of the shows, the trauma and the things that you have to go through after the trauma, they get right. Some of them. A lot of the mental things you have to deal with are pretty intense.
You know, like in Law and Order SVU, there's an episode where Olivia gets kidnapped. Sorry for spoilers, but she goes through a trauma.
Yeah.
And she has to be psych evaluated and, approved by a psychiatrist before she can go back to work.
Right.
Is that how it works if something like that happens? If you go through a hard trauma?
Most departments, most departments do that. Some of them don't. I think they should, because it does definitely wear on your mind. Some of the things you see and face. Like I said, that's where you get jaded a lot.
That was not one of the questions that was on my list of questions, but I thought it was a good idea. That's why he kind of got caught off guard, because he hadn't heard that question before. Have you ever used your status to get any freebies or perks?
No, I tried not to. A lot of places, they will, like fast food places especially, if you pull up in a squad car or, they know you as a police officer, they'll try and give you free food. I prefer to pay for it. There's a lot of times they'll give you a discount. If I got a discount, I would leave an extra tip at a walk-in restaurant or something like that. I believe that's not part of the job. Police officers don't get paid what they're worth. So a lot of officers take that, but personally, I prefer just paying what I owe.
See, my thing is, I'm opening a sweet shop, okay? I think they've heard about it. But I either want to do where, like, police officers, EMTs, firefighters, people who serve the community in that way, either let them have it for free or have them pay, and whatever money they pay goes into charity.
Well, I would give them the offer. I would give them the choice. That's or even have a special officer or EMT appreciation week or month or what have you, and then they have the choice of either coming in and paying out of pocket or donating or just getting whatever.
I bounce all of my ideas off Mr. Todd. He knows what he's talking about. Most of the time. Which crimes did you hate arresting people for?
Which crimes did I hate arresting people for?
Yes, sir.
Oh.
Again, I gave him these questions a week ago. It's okay. You got a busy life.
Really, I didn't hate arresting for any crime. If they deserved it, they deserved it. You know, if it was something that warranted them being arrested, then you know they deserve being arrested.
Well, I know there are some officers that go through like a homeless family.
Mm-hmm.
They will, if they will have. I know I read it somewhere. Give me a minute. I read it somewhere. Ow! Gah! Funny bone table, not funny. Ow! Anyway, this officer caught a man stealing food. He had to arrest him.
Yeah.
He found out that the man had been trying to get a job. He had kids, and he couldn't get a job no matter how hard he tried. He couldn't get hired somewhere, and he couldn't feed his kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole reason he was stealing. And the police officer felt horrible because he was just doing what he needed to do to survive. So, but instead of, he had him, stay there for the extent of what he was supposed to. But he also showed up with food for the kids and tried to help out, kind of thing.
Well, that's the thing. If he was arrested for it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you have to. If you're done, if you did something that you weren't supposed to do, you broke the law, and you had to be arrested for it, you would arrest somebody. But that police officer went out of his way, which was a great thing. I probably would have done the same thing, to go out and try and help him support his kids until they could find some way of helping him. I mean, there are things out there like food banks and other places, homeless kitchens, all kinds of places out there that are specifically made to help people in situations like that. As an officer, I've handed out many of cards that had these places on them for people who needed it. And that's something, that as an officer you should try and do, I think. That's part of the serve part of protect and serve.
There are a lot of police officers, and I've seen it here and there, and I don't think they get enough appreciation for it. Hey, Mom!
Sorry about that.
Sorry about that, that was important. But as I was saying, you don't see it enough, but you do see it that cops go above, that there are police officers that go above and beyond.
Yeah.
Just like their Call of Duty. Like I've seen things like officers that have to like break down doors and go into houses to arrest people, and it's this whole like horde of officers. And you've got those cops that like stay behind to help with the children. And it's not just like their duty to stand there and be there till like DFS shows up or something, but like they'll feed the kids and they'll play with the kids. And then you got the officers who like they'll break down drug houses, and there's these dogs or animals that have been abused, and they'll like bathe them and they'll play with them and they'll take care of them. And there are those officers that do go above and beyond, and I don't think they get enough appreciation for that. Yeah. Or seen, like you hear all the time about these horrible things that cops do or are believed to do. You hear more about the negative than the positive.
Well, it's just popular news, and unfortunately, that's what gives police officers a bad light, and why police officers get so much hate, disrespect, whatever. I mean, a lot of them are just trying to do their jobs. There's others that are trying to serve their community as best they can.
Our next question is, what crimes have you felt are underreported but dire criminal scourges on society today?
Oh. Drugs. Hardcore drugs. Meth and heroin. I mean, they're... That's the worst thing out there. It really is. Drinking and driving takes so many lives. If you're going to drink, be responsible.
I have a cousin who was hit by a drunk driver and she died.
I've had several friends who've been hit by drunk drivers. I've worked enough accidents where drunk drivers were involved that it's just You know, it's sad. You see whole families destroyed by somebody who is just out partying and not being responsible about it. You know, just be responsible. You know, if you're going to go out and drink, fine, but have a designated driver, or get a cab. I mean, yeah, cabs are expensive, but it's better. It's less expensive than somebody's life or going to prison.
And if you live in a small town that doesn't have a cab service, be sure that there's a designated driver with you.
Yeah.
Or if you live in a town small enough that you don't have a cab service, you can probably walk home.
It's better to walk home than kill somebody.
I've had a cousin die because they were hit by a drunk driver. I've had a classmate. He was a classmate of mine. He was of age when it happened to be drinking, but he decided to drive home and he died. He ironically hit the fire department chief's vehicle on his way home that was parked in front of his house. I know it's not something to laugh about, but that's what happened. And he was shot from his car and slid across the pavement.
Most of the serious accidents I've worked involved a drunk driver.
And what's sad is it ruins other people's families, like the ones that die, it ruins their family's life, and then you make that one mistake and it haunts you for the rest of your life. Like if you have a conscience, it will haunt you because you took somebody's life because you wanted to have a good time and you weren't thinking responsibly. Because you see it a lot that teenagers, it's usually teenagers that I see.
Teenagers, but there's also plenty of adults out there that drink and drive. And I mean, everybody has their limits. You know, you just learn yours and don't go over them.
But the teenagers that I've seen, like you see them, they show like pictures in court and stuff like that of them just falling apart because they made that mistake. And they're now going to prison for it because they killed somebody. Even though it was an accident. And even though I'm not saying that's not something that should be treated as such, but be more aware of what you're doing. Before you go to this place and party, either plan to stay the night there or set it up to where you have somebody who is sober to take you home. Or walk.
Sometimes I don't suggest walking because I've seen people pass out in the middle of the road and get hit, you know, so I mean, it just seriously, if you just find some way of being responsible. Designated driver's your best bet.
Well, that's like in Owensville, there's 2 bars other than the bowling alley that serves alcohol. But there are 2 bars. There's Bogey's and there's Miller House, and they're very close together, but they're on the main strip of Owensville. And yeah, you see people who drive and go to Bogey's, but you also see those people that usually like live. Owensville is a small town. Most of the time, you live close enough to where it's maybe a 10-minute walk, and so you'll see people leave the bar and walk home. I know I've been to a bar twice, and the first time I went with a relative of mine who insisted that she wasn't going to drink, and then she ended up drinking and getting drunk, and she was like, and she kept because we went it was a couple weeks after my 21st birthday, but that was her way of celebrating it with me. She was supposed to be my ride home, but she ended up getting drunk, and she's like, okay, I'll quit drinking now so that we can leave, but I know it takes hours to get to where you are sober enough to drive, so I called another relative of mine to come pick me up and take me home. Because I wanted to go home. And I could have walked, but I had to cross the main highway in the town. And I don't even like crossing the highway sober. So I was like, no, that's a bad idea. So I texted, actually, another relative of mine and asked them if they could pick me up. And the second time I went to the bar, the person who was supposed to be the designated driver stayed sober, just played pool with us. And stayed sober, and it was a good old time.
Right.
Next we have you ever been assaulted on the job?
Yes. On numerous occasions.
Not fun.
No.
Not fun.
No.
How did you relieve stress as an officer? Because being a cop is a stressful job.
A lot of working out in the gym. Just coming home and taking my mind off of work. I tried to keep my home life and my work life separate, which isn't always easy to do, and it's not necessarily good on a relationship. If you're in a relationship, you got to find ways of talking about things. And it's not necessarily always easy.
Why did you retire?
A couple of reasons. Politics. One, I didn't believe in some of the politics. I don't believe in mixing police work and politics. I know it is a big political thing, depending on who you work for. What if you're working for state or county or city, there's always some kind of politics involved. But when you're told that not to ticket somebody, or this ticket isn't going to be pushed through because it's somebody important's friend, or son, or what have you, that kind of you're handicapped from doing your job, and that doesn't happen. So that got to me. Also the fact that I was changing, and not for the best. I was starting to get jaded. I started looking at everybody like, you're a criminal, you just haven't been caught yet. And I that's not me. That's not who I am. So I decided it was time to change careers.
What have you been doing since you retired?
Oh, many things.
Hence the reason he has all the titles.
Working in different factories, remodeling my family's farmhouse. As you can see, it's in the background here.
That's why I told him, I'm like, we're working on it.
Yeah, I've got a lot of mudding and taping. We need to sand it all down and get it painted.
They're going to put Melina on the back of a couch to do so. I'm tempted to put it up and let them watch me be clumsy.
Right. I'm in a podcast now. Yeah, searching for the words. I'm in a podcast now that we just got started. It's if anybody's interested, it's a Patreon account. It's under Bad Laren, for bad people.
I will leave a link in the description below if you'd like to go check out Mr. Todd's podcast.
It's funny. Most of the time.
Most of the time.
It's something that I enjoy doing, and I never thought I'd get paid for it. But the more people that subscribe, the more money I'm going to make. Go for it. Other than that, just living life and trying to find happiness, which I'm doing a pretty good job at.
What would you say is the greatest thing that's happened since you retired?
Finding myself again. Not being out there looking at everybody like they're a crook or a bad guy in some way. Just finding that inner peace. I know there's a lot of police officers out there that can handle the job and not get jaded. And kudos, man. It's a hard job. And I find, every time I see an officer in a restaurant or out, I always thank them for their service, because they are. Just like in the military, military personnel, they're out there doing their bit for this country. And I thank them for what they do, because they're putting their lives on the line. A police officer's doing the same thing. It's just not against, a foreign danger. It's local dangers, and I have the utmost respect for police officers, EMTs, firefighters, because they're all doing what they have to protect the community in some way.
Military personnel, it's not just cops. You see military people who get hated on. Vietnam veterans, they had a lot of hate when they came back. And still to this day, you'll hear them get snarky comments. And my papa was a Vietnam veteran, and I remember being out walking around, and you had the few select people who would, because he had a hat that said Vietnam veteran. It was one of his favorite hats to wear. Because he was proud of what he did. He was proud of his service.
I think everybody in the military should be proud of their service.
And he had the select few that would thank him for, like, they would stop him and they would thank him for his service. But then you'd have the people that would make comments, and because they believe they didn't like the fact that we were over there.
This is my favorite coffee mug. I don't know if you can see it, but it is a military coffee mug. A friend of mine was in that unit, and he sent me that mug, and he never returned, so I carry it with me and use it all the time.
I was wondering where you got that.
Yep.
Like, I have the utmost respect for those who serve. I've met, just like everywhere else in life, you've got good cops, you've got bad cops, you've got good firefighters, you've got bad firefighters, good EMTs, bad EMTs, good military personnel, bad military personnel. And there are ones that do their jobs, and then when they're not working, they're assholes. People are human.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that should be enough. Just because you've met a few selective assholes. To start stereotyping every cop. Or building this prejudice against cops and military personnel. They put their lives on the line for this country in general. Whether it's here in the United States or overseas. Whether it's this community or that community. Yeah, you've got, like you said, the badge-heavy ones. But you've also got good cops.
Yeah.
And the last one is, what advice would you give someone who wants to be a cop?
Do it for the right reasons. You'll never be paid enough to make up for what you got to go through. So don't do it. If you're looking for money, that's not your job.
If you're looking for money, be a stripper. I'm not wrong. They make bank.
They do. But, I mean, do it for the right reasons. Do it and don't let the job get to you. If you need help with anything you come through, seek it. If you need help with trauma of some kind that you've gone through, find it. Don't let the job get to you. And do it for the community. Do it for the people. Do it to help them. Keep the crime low, and keep people safe. That's what the job's about. It's not about, oh, I'm a cop, so I'm powerful. That's not it. Just find the right reasons to do it.
It's, oh, I'm a cop, this woman's getting robbed, Batman's not here. I crack jokes. But, I want to say thank you for coming on my channel. We did this interview so that you could meet the Mr. Todd, because you've heard his voice behind the camera, so at least in the video where I was talking about my Uncle Corey and what he was doing. Which, by the way, if you haven't seen the video, go watch the video, go check out the link, go check out his stuff, dude. I'm watching you.
Corey rocks.
But, hi Corey, but we also did this because there is, especially nowadays, you see it a lot more, this hate towards cops and this belief that all cops are bad. And so I wanted to sit down and do this interview with you, and I told you this before we did this interview, that I want to get rid of the stigma that there is of cops. I think that's the right word.
Well, I wish you luck, because it's a hard stigma to get rid of.
I know it's a hard stigma to get rid of.
Hopefully this will help a little bit.
I wanted to show that there are good cops out there, and I wanted to show that
I don't exactly look like a cop anymore, but
No, you look like an old sheriff. Not old, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like old Western sheriff.
right.
With your cowboy hat. You got cowboy boots on too.
Yes, I do.
And blue
I'm
jeans.
a
Look at you
cowboy
being
at
snazzy.
heart.
Look at you being all snazzy. You also got your ponytail and show him your hair. Look at that. He's got more hair than I do. But we wanted to do this. I wanted to do this interview because like I said, I'm a firm believer that there's good and bad in everything. It does, like, there's good and bad Christians, there's good and bad pagans, there's good and bad civilians, there's good and bad cops.
Right.
I think that should be something that is known, that there are good cops out there. That there are cops that are just doing their job. And there are cops that are doing their job and go above and beyond. And you got...
Yeah.
And then there are those cops that are just assholes. And then there's the thing where there's cops that are just doing their job, and they're good at their job, and they're doing what they're good at, and they're taken as an asshole. Like, it gets talked about a lot when they have to meet their quota.
Yeah, we never had a quota. That's a big thing, but I don't know if it's by department or what, but we never had a quota. It was, you just did your job. I don't know where that rumor got started or how that got started, but most departments that I know of don't have quotas. So,
well, the reason I think that got started is because certain times, especially near the end of the month,
you see a lot more police officers pulling people over,
giving out tickets, not being as lenient as they normally are.
I think it's just you're noticing it more.
Maybe.
But, hey,
like
I might be wrong.
Like I said,
It might be the department.
Like I said, I've been pulled over 3 times in my life. The third time I was pulled over, I was with a buddy of mine. He was pulled over by a state trooper. And there's a huge stigma that out of all cops, state troopers are the biggest assholes. But this state trooper pulled us over and said we were speeding. And I hear all the time that if a state trooper pulls you over, there's no way you're getting out of a ticket. I hear it all the time. But
Depends on the officer.
Before the officer got there, when we pulled over enough to where he didn't have to worry about walking along that white line. He rolled the window down all the way, even though I know by law you don't have to roll it down all the way. He rolled it down, at least that's what I've been told. You don't have to roll it down all the way.
No, you don't.
But he rolled it down all the way, and he was really polite, and he apologized for speeding. He didn't realize he was speeding. We were in a vehicle that he wasn't used to driving, so he didn't know. We were talking, and he wasn't paying attention. And he apologized. He was really polite. He gave the officer the information he needed. The officer came back and said that he'd let him off with a warning. That he understands that, new vehicle, this is the first time he's been caught speeding, and he wasn't going that much over the speed limit. And he said, but it's just my job, you were speeding, I had to pull you over.
Right.
And my friend was like, I understand that, and I thank you for doing your job.
That's the key. 90% of the time, that's the key. Not necessarily to get out of a ticket, because you're going to get a ticket. If you're doing something wrong, you're going to get a ticket. But be polite. You be polite to people, and treat them with respect that you would rather. If you put yourself in their position, would you want respect or would you want somebody to be an asshole to you? If you show respect to the person, a lot of times that helps out. That makes a difference. It might get you out of a ticket.
Not to mention, keep in mind,
just accept whatever it is. I mean, if it's a ticket, it's a ticket. It's not the end of the world.
It's not like you're getting jailed for it, unless you don't pay it.
But just take responsibility for your actions and be polite.
Not to mention, you need to keep in mind, a lot of people don't see it this way. They see it that it's just a traffic stop. He's not putting his life on the line here. That's not true. There have been several cases that I have I've looked up some statistics and stuff like that. A police officer, when they pull you over, they have to walk along the highway. And there have been numerous times where somebody will swerve just to hit a police officer.
Traffic stops are one of the most dangerous things in police work.
Not to mention, you never know if somebody has a gun on them or...
Exactly. You don't. You're more vulnerable because you're out of your vehicle, and the person in the vehicle. Not only the person in the vehicle, but traffic. You got traffic to worry about. You have the person in the vehicle. You can't always see what's in their vehicle when you're approaching. If they're armed or not armed. so traffic stops are one of the most hazardous parts of being a police officer. So I mean, more police officers get hurt during traffic stops than almost anything else.
That's like I grew up in Owensville. You guys know about that. I don't live there anymore, but I did. And you would hear a lot of the time when like cops would be not really on patrol driving around, but sitting. I don't know what it's called. A lot of people call it a speed trap, but it wasn't really a speed trap. They'd sit at one of the shut down gas stations. They just sit along the Highway 28.
Yeah.
Then you had ones that drove around for patrol.
Right.
But the ones that would be sitting there,
Doing traffic.
you'd hear all the time from people making snickers about how they're not doing anything. They're just sitting there. Like one time we drove past one of them because we were driving down a side road and they were sitting there. He was on Facebook. And he's like, he's not doing anything. I'm like, he's got nothing to do.
That's part of the boredom of it.
Give him credit. Like, it wasn't like it was on,
He's probably running radar.
I was about to say, he wasn't on, like, his computer that tells you how fast people are going or whatever. He was on his cell phone.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's not driving.
Yeah.
He's not on his his work thingamajiggy on Facebook. He's on his phone. He's got nothing to do. If somebody's speeding, it'll pick up and he'll hear it. He'll put his phone down and he'll do his job. And I knew this officer because I went to high school with him. And anytime I've ever seen... Okay, I've been pulled over 4 times. Never mind. I just remembered one. It's never me because I'm never driving, so I forget. But I've always seen him do his job, and he's always really polite about it. And you hear that outside of work, he's an asshole. But that's outside of work. Outside of work, that's your thing. But when you're on the job, you're supposed to be a police officer, and you're supposed to do your job. The 4th time that I remember getting pulled over now, I was with a couple friends of mine. And he had a tail light out. And his license plate was expired. Well, this cop, like I said, I went to high school with him. He pulled us over. He asked for all of our identifications. And he let my buddy know, you have a tail light out and your license plate is expired. And he let him off with a warning because he was polite to him. But then he found out that one of the friends in the car had a warrant because he missed court for a speeding ticket. For a speeding ticket, nonetheless. But he told him he had to get out. He asked him to get out of the car, explained to him why he had to do this, and told him that he hates doing it. He knows he's a good guy. He knows he works hard. And when my friend explained to him that he never got the information that he had court that day. He had moved recently. So he never got the letter in the mail or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. He said, I still gotta take you down to the station. It's like, I hate to do it, but I still gotta take you down to the station. And he goes, well, I have the money on me to pay my fine. He's like, alright, I still have to take you down to the station. He goes, okay. And he said, now it's up to you. I can either cuff you, or you can come get in the car. He goes, I'll get in the car. And he goes, thank you. Because I know cuffs are uncomfortable. And that happen. I see that happen a lot in smaller towns and in bigger cities, but especially when you know everybody.
Yeah.
So you know who's a threat and who's not, and who's hostile and who's not, kind of thing. But it's also,
It all depends. It depends a lot on the department. The department has what's called standard operating procedures, or SOPs. Some departments don't require you to handcuff people. Some departments require you to handcuff people. It just depends. A lot of times. But
he was really polite, and he took him down to the station, and he paid his fine, and he gave him his cell phone back, and he called us to come pick him up. So we went and we picked him up, and he's like, well, there went my paycheck, and I'm like, you would have paid your fine to begin with. He goes, I didn't know I had card. But he gave them his new address too, so that when need be.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's something, he had to do his job, and that's part of his job.
I've only ever once had to deal with a rude officer in my life. I've been called to the station because I was kind of not really a witness, but I was one of the first people that were told about things. And it was always the chief that talked to me about it in Owensville. And he's known me since I was yay big. And he was always real polite to me, and he'd always apologize for waking me up that early on a Saturday and stuff like that. And, I was really polite with him. I was always honest with him. And the other cop was the incident that happened not too long ago. And when I showed him respect and I was polite to him, he talked to me like a person. He talked to me in a polite manner and informed me of what was going on. He asked me who I was, for starters, which is understandable in a heated situation like we were in. I explained to him who I was, and I explained to him all sorts of stuff, like who I had just talked to, why I was asking him what I was asking him. I was just trying to be respectful and polite about it, because I know if you're respectful and polite, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be the same.
Right.
Unless you've got, like you said, the badge-heavy ones, or like I said, the assholes. But thank you again, Todd, for taking part of my interview. Our interview lasted almost an hour.
Wow. All right.
I think that's because we kept derailing and re-railing.
Well, yeah.
It happens. But if you guys enjoyed this interview and you liked me doing a video with Mr. Todd, leave a like and a thumb, like, this thing.
Thumbs up.
This thing. If you want to see me do more interviews, leave another like.
Thumbs up.
Well, not another. You can't really like it again. But like it anyway. If you have questions that you would like to be answered yourself, you can leave a comment and I'll ask Mr. Todd. Or we can do a follow-up sometime, maybe, of the questions that they leave.
Enough questions, sure. I'll answer as best I can.
But if you enjoyed this video, favorite it. I'll leave a link in the description below for Mr. Todd's podcast. Go check it out. Give him some love. Again, check out the video about Corey, because Corey got brought up in this. So go check out the video about Corey and check his stuff out. Give him some love. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, hit the little bell and get to where you get the notifications about it. If this video gets enough attention, I might do more interviews. Not necessarily with Todd. I'll probably do more interviews with Todd, but I'll bring in more people to do interviews about like what they've done in their life, their careers, that kind of thing. But I'm trying to remember what I was going to say next. I forgot. Love you guys. Bye.